What is it like being, let's talk a bit about you and your celebrity, because you do talk about in your book becoming famous off the back of your sons is quite something hard to deal with, because it wasn't something that you were ready for. It wasn't something you were expecting, was it?
No, I think, when you start out, you have no idea where you're going, and you certainly have no idea where you're going to end up. And the number of things that I've had to learn along the way, sometimes out of necessity, nearly all out of necessity, sometimes that necessity of I need to learn how to handle PR or learn more about the media. I went off and did a PR course because somebody needs to do that for them. They're not going to be able to do it themselves, and I needed to understand it. I learned how to do tax returns in 3 different countries because somebody's got to do that. I mean, how boring is that? But you've got to, because you earn money in different countries because you're traveling and blah, blah, blah. So there's nobody else to do it, or you don't have the money to pay somebody else to do it. So I kind of learned all sorts of things, and, it was always sort of there, but more, I would say, in the background. They always had coaches who had to be paid for, and teams of people who had to be paid for, and make sure everybody's in the right place at the right time, that the flights are booked and all the rest of it. Now he has a management company that does all of those things for him, and I don't need to do it. But in the early days, you have to do it because they're young. They can't do it for themselves, and they can't employ a team of older guys because they don't know how to. Somebody's really got to do all of that stuff. But I think that probably started when I became the Fed Cup captain. I started to create a bit more of a profile as a coach, because in those years from being the Scottish national coach to becoming Fed Cup captain, which was probably about 8 years, I'd largely become Andy and Jamie's mum.
Yeah.
And not a coach. And then suddenly I was the Fed Cup captain, which was a wonderful experience for me and great opportunity. And then Andy won Wimbledon. I started to do a little bit more, and that's when I got asked if I would like to do Strictly. Early 2014, I got asked to do that. And that was, for me, was just one of those things. It was the first thing that I had done for myself in years and years and years. And I really wanted to do it because I loved Strictly. And so I thought, I'm going to have to tell the boys and see what they think about it, because obviously everything that each of us does impacts on the other. Yeah. And so I asked Jamie the easier option first, and he said, "Oh, Mum, you love that show. Go on, you'll have a great time." And I asked Andy, and he said, "Oh my God, you'll be rubbish." And the funny thing was, they were both right, because I did love it and I was rubbish. But I had no idea that Strictly was going to raise my profile so hugely, because, you're doing it for the fun of it, but you suddenly realize after you've done the first show that you're in front of 10 to 14 million people every Saturday night, and suddenly people are recognizing you in the street. But it's made a lot more people interested in what I do tennis-wise. So I hopefully I've used it to my advantage.
Yeah, what did you make? So you loved the experience, didn't you?
I did. I absolutely loved it. You should do it.
Anton de Beek.
Oh,
well, I used to. I used to go down with Simon when Simon Rimmer was on and watch it, and I didn't really have much of an interest in it until I used to go and watch him, and just the buzz around. It's like a sporting event, isn't it? Yeah. And the adrenaline and the nerves from the contestants is phenomenal, and also the pros. Yeah, they love it as well, and it's quite an amazing thing when you actually go down. It's like watching a sporting event, watching all the people come out and stuff like that. I'd probably consider doing it now, but years ago I'd have thought, no, it's not really my thing. But it's amazing.
You need to be able to park your life for at least 3 months, maybe 4 months. There's quite a lot to. You don't know how.
Did you think you'd be good at it?
I thought I would be better than I was. Because of being sporty
and competitive.
That surprised me. The thing that surprised me about it, I just didn't want to be the first one off, because I thought my kids will kill me if I'm the first one off. I'll be the biggest embarrassment ever. But actually, as the weeks went on, it's not that you're trying to win it. You just don't want to go off. Yeah. You just want to stay in it because you're having such a great time. But I thought I'd be better at it. But I think what occurred to me was that when I did it, I was 55, and I'd never danced ever. I'm not nightclubby or disco-y, never have been. So I was learning a brand new skill at 55, and it's much harder to learn something new as you get older, because your brain just doesn't retain things the way that it perhaps did when you're younger. You're learning a set routine with your feet, whereas when in sport, you're moving with instinct. You don't think about it, and I was having to think about every single step, and then it wasn't just the steps, it was the arms and the hands and the shoulder and the neck and the face and what angle you put your head at, and it was just all too much. And the other thing was that my partner was so much great fun, I don't think I was concentrating half the time because I was just having a great time.
Yeah, he's
so
great,
consequently I was rubbish, but he was wonderful.
What did Andy and Jamie make of it then when you were actually on it?
Well, you know what? This was really interesting for me because once they got over the first few weeks of like, oh my God, look at my mum all dressed up with all that stuff and everything, Jamie actually became quite competitive with it. He would say, what are you doing this week, Mum? And he would send me clips from YouTube of the dance that I was doing and say, right, watch this, you've got to do it. He started almost like trying to coach me.
Brilliant.
And pretty much every week he went into performance mode. You know, it's a competition, you need to get better. And he would say to me, Mum, you're not getting any better. And at one time he said to me, is Anton pushing you hard enough? Should we think about bringing in another coach to help you? And I was like, what
brilliant.
are you talking about? You know, like just having a great time. But that fascinated me that he went completely into competitor
He'd
mode.
learnt off you.
Well, maybe, yeah. But what, and Andy was, I think for him, I just remember him, because he was nearly always abroad, but he was always on top of the show, and he would be sending me messages after the judges had done all their comments saying, oh, more court 18 than centre court, or, you know, and I'm going, I said, how are you watching that? He's going, oh, I've got it on a feed in Vienna or wherever he was. So they were really into it, and I think what Andy loved about it was the number of people who said to him, we saw your mum on Strictly, she's doing great, she looks fantastic, whatever, she's having a great time. And he loved that because I think one of his worries when I said I would do it would be about you're opening yourself up to a huge audience. And because he'd seen me being criticised, I think, for so many years, he was worried about that.
I forget it must be quite tough on Andy and Jamie having their mum criticised as well as the press decide to take you apart. You know, you're worrying about Andy and Jamie and they're worrying about you at the same time. It must be quite tough, Yeah, weird thing to go through. Actually, it's interesting to talk about coaches there with Jamie. Tennis players go through so many coaches, don't they? Is it just because it's relentless and it's tough to keep that relationship going with them? Yeah,
it is because, you know, if you're in a one-on-one relationship, you know, there's as much pressure on the coach as there is on the player. And you know, it's why it's so important it's difficult to get the right fit of someone who can offer the skill set and experience that you're looking for and the personality fit, because you're going to have to go for dinner with that person most nights of the week. You're having to spend time on court, off court, traveling. You know, it's a very intense relationship, and so it doesn't surprise me how often you have splits. But you need different people at different times of your career. You know, Andy's had quite a few coaches, but you know, every coach has inputted in a positive way at every step of his career.
Do you help him make the decisions?
Not now, no, not for a while actually. I think he's more than capable of doing that himself. And it is the being comfortable with somebody, being able to speak to them, being able to talk about your worries, your fears, your ideas of how you want to play, what you want to add to your game. I think when you're younger, you find a lot of coaches who tell you what to do all the time. And actually, he got to a stage actually at quite a young age, probably in his early 20s, where he wanted to be in charge of how he wanted to play. You need somebody to help you, but it's like, this is what suits me the best.
What goes behind making a number one tennis player? You've obviously got your coach. And they have their management.
Yeah.
What else do they have? Dietitians and physios, and I mean, how many different people does it take to get to? Well, you're always looking for, you know, if you get into the top 10 or even the top 5 and you're looking for what's the difference between 5 and 4 and 3 and 2, 1, it's little tiny differences, and it's often people who bring particular areas of expertise that can create those small margins. So whether that's you need physio, you need a fitness trainer, you know, you need somebody to get your body doing what you need it to do. You know, if you're playing in a Grand Slam, you could be out there for 5 hours. You have a day's rest and you have to go again for another 5 hours. So the fitness trainer is really important. If you're putting your body through that amount of stress, you need a physio to look after your body. So you need
You need those two. Of course, you need a coach. Sometimes you might need a hitting partner as well if your coach is unable to hit. If you find a coach who can still spar, then that's great, although you can obviously hit with other players. But if you hit with other players, you're more likely to do that if you want practice matches or practice sets.
Right.
If you want to work on something in your game, you'll do that with your coach and a hitting partner. So you might need a video analyst, somebody who picks up the USB stick of your match, which you get from the ATP tour at the end of the match, and sticks it in the computer and analyzes it and feeds through with the coach. So you've got stuff to feed back to the player. You need somebody to do all your logistics, which is more your management team. Somebody doing the PR. You need a financial advisor. There's all sorts of people. So I went from learning how to coach to eventually, at one stage, learning to manage a team of people on the tennis side and a team of people on the business side, until Andy was old enough to be able to go and do all of that, manage that sort of side of it yourself. But, it's so important that you have the right people around you. So important. And you never know if you've got the right people or not. But
final question for you. What is the meaning of life, Judy Murray?
I think it's about following your dreams, and I think it's about taking advantage of it. Just, I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and go, I wish I'd done this and I wish I'd done that. And I think that in the last 5 or 6 years, if I've wanted to do something, I got a tattoo.
Have you?
Yeah,
Whoa!
a spider.
Wow.
A spider.
Why a spider?
Robert the Bruce. You know, Robert the Bruce, that old Scottish story of Robert the Bruce imprisoned in a cave and all hope is lost, and he watches the spider trying to spin a web across the cave and failing and failing and failing and getting up and trying again, and eventually she succeeds because she's a she spider. And it's a bit like when I finished the book, because everything was, spent so much of time people putting me down and saying, go away, don't be silly, you'll never do it. If I'd listened to people, I would have given up long, long, long ago, and none of it would have happened. So I thought, you know what? I'm like Robert the Bruce and that spider. I'm going to get a spider when I finish my book. So I did it. And I never would have done that when I was a student, for example, even though I'd wanted to. And now, for me, it is, you realize you're coming to the last section of your life. And it's like, if I want to do something now, I'm just going to go off and do it.
Go on then, we all want to know, what did Andy and Jamie think of you getting a spider tattooed on yourself?
There was a significant amount of eye rolling.
I wonder what they think. Oh no, they must phone each other up. Have you heard? Mum's got a spider tattooed on herself. What is happening?